The company had not failed because its engineering was flawed. It had not been crushed by audiophile rivals. For decades, a Velodyne subwoofer was the foundational requirement of the American custom home theater. It was the heavy wooden cabinet that made the walls shake in Magnolia hi-fi demonstration rooms across the country, selling for thousands of dollars to buyers who wanted the physical weight of a cinema in their own homes. But by the time the audio brand was shipped overseas, its founder had already become a billionaire building something else entirely: LiDAR lasers for self-driving cars. The man who perfected extreme low-frequency audio had looked toward the highway and left the living room behind. But the real story of Velodyne is not just the story of a company that changed industries. It is the story of how America learned to feel movies in the basement, and why a market obsessed with convenience eventually decided that real, uncompressed bass took up too much space. Every week, we tell the stories of American speakers, audio brands, stereo stores, and listening rooms that once shaped how people heard music, movies, and memory, and what happened when the market moved on. Subscribe if that history matters to you. The story begins not with nostalgia, but with a specific place in a California engineering shop in 1983. For decades, the standard stereo system relied on two wooden boxes sitting on the floor or resting on bookshelves. Whether a listener preferred the tight, controlled sound of East Coast acoustic suspension or the loud, highly efficient projection of West Coast horn systems, the fundamental physics of extreme low frequencies remained a stubborn barrier. To create deep bass, a speaker had to move massive amounts of air. To move massive amounts of air, a company had to use a large woofer, a large driver designed to reproduce low frequencies such as bass and drums. But physics exacts a toll. When a large paper or plastic cone was pushed to its physical limits by a powerful amplifier, the material flexed. The suspension stretched. The cone would overshoot its intended mark. The result was distortion, unwanted change added to the sound by the speaker, amplifier, or room. At normal volumes, a traditional woofer sounded fine. But when asked to reproduce the lowest octave of human hearing, especially below 30 Hertz, most American hi-fi speakers produced a muddy, inaccurate rumble. The bass was loud, but it was not true. The problem was not making the bass loud. The problem was making it stop. When a heavy woofer cone pushes outward to reproduce a kick drum, momentum makes it want to keep moving even after the electrical signal has ended. That physical overhang smears the sound, hiding the texture of the music. For the audio industry in the early 1980s, this was simply an accepted limitation of the wooden box. David Hall did not accept it. Operating out of San Jose, California, in the heart of a rapidly expanding Silicon Valley, Hall approached speaker design not as a traditional carpenter or an old-school acoustic engineer, but as a technologist obsessed with precise measurement. He looked at the traditional American stereo speaker and saw a fundamentally blind system. A standard stereo receiver sent an electrical signal down a length of copper wire to a passive cabinet. The wooden, plastic, or composite box that holds the drivers and shapes how the speaker interacts with the air. The receiver had no way of knowing what the woofer actually did once the signal arrived. Hall believed that the only way to achieve perfect, zero distortion bass was to watch the woofer in real time and force it to obey. In 1983, he founded Velodyne Acoustics and introduced a radical solution: high-gain servo technology. Instead of relying solely on a stiff cone and a heavy magnet, Hall mounted an ultra-sensitive accelerometer directly to the voice coil, a coil of wire attached to the speaker cone that moves when electricity passes through it. This sensor measured the exact physical movement of the cone 3,500 times a second. It sent that movement data back to a custom-designed amplifier, which compared the physical motion of the speaker to the original audio signal. If the woofer deviated by even a fraction of a millimeter, the amplifier instantly inverted the signal to correct the error. The technology clamped down on the driver like a digital vice. It forced a massive, heavy cone to start and stop with the precision of a high-frequency tweeter. The first physical manifestation of this idea was the Velodyne ULD-18. The ULD stood for ultra-low distortion. It was a massive, heavy, downward-firing 18-inch woofer housed in a beautifully finished walnut cabinet. Because the servo system required absolute integration between the driver and its power source, the ULD-18 could not be driven by a standard stereo receiver. It was sold as a complete system, including a dedicated 400-watt external amplifier and controller unit that sat in the stereo rack alongside the turntable and cassette deck. It was not a product for the casual listener. In the mid-1980s, the Velodyne ULD-18 carried a retail price of approximately $1,850, roughly equivalent to $5,300 today. At that price, a consumer could easily buy an entire high-end hi-fi system, complete with towering speakers, a premium receiver, and a high-quality turntable. But for a specific tier of the American audio market, the price was justified the moment they heard it in a listening room. When high-end stereo stores and hi-fi dealers began demonstrating the ULD-18, the reaction was immediate. Traditional subwoofers, a speaker designed to reproduce very low bass frequencies, often produce 10 to 20% distortion when pushed hard. The Velodyne ULD-18 could drop down to an earth-shaking 16 Hz, while maintaining less than 1% distortion. In a high-end stereo showroom in California, or an exclusive hi-fi boutique in New York, a dealer would play a complex classical pipe organ recording or a jazz track with a heavy acoustic bass. The ULD-18 did not just add boom to the room, it revealed the physical texture of the instrument. Listeners could feel the air pressurize against their chests without the muddy overhang that had plagued large speakers for decades. Audio magazines quickly took notice, crowning Velodyne as a marvel of modern acoustic engineering. The company established a factory in California and began building a dealer network of serious, performance-oriented stereo shops that understood how to explain and demonstrate servo technology. At that moment, the Velodyne subwoofer was primarily a niche audiophile product. It was a tool for wealthy stereo enthusiasts who wanted to extract the final % of fidelity from their vinyl records and newly introduced compact discs. It required careful placement in a room, complex wiring, and a deep understanding of bass frequencies. The ULD-18 proved that deep bass could be measured, harnessed, and perfectly controlled. It was an engineering triumph. But a new listening format was about to arrive, one that would turn the subwoofer from a rare audiophile luxury into an absolute American living room requirement. For decades, the standard listening experience was the two-channel stereo system, a pair of speakers meant to create a stereo image, the illusion that sounds come from places between and around two cabinets. But American consumers were beginning to demand a different kind of illusion. The rise of VHS and Laserdisc brought Dolby Pro logic, and soon after, the digital revolution of Dolby Digital 5.1 and THX certification arrived in domestic spaces. This shift fundamentally changed how sound was mixed, packaged, and delivered. Instead of just sending full-range audio to a left and right speaker, movie soundtracks now featured a dedicated LFE channel, low-frequency effects. This was the 0.1 in a 5.1 surround sound system. It was an audio channel completely separated from the dialogue and the musical score, specifically reserved for the deep, structural rumble of explosions, earthquakes, roaring engines, and spacecraft. Suddenly, a home theater, a system of multiple speakers designed to recreate the cinema experience in a living room, required a dedicated subwoofer. It was no longer just an optional audiophile accessory used to flesh out the bottom notes of a jazz record. It was a mandatory engine for the cinematic experience. Velodyne was perfectly positioned to dominate this new American arena. While other American speaker companies hastily threw cheap drivers into ported boxes to meet the sudden retail demand, a port being an opening in a speaker cabinet that uses moving air to reinforce bass output, Velodyne stuck rigidly to its high-precision, servo-controlled philosophy. A ported subwoofer could play loud, but it often sounded loose and boomy, lingering in the room long after the on-screen explosion had finished. Velodyne utilized a sealed box, a closed speaker cabinet that uses trapped air behind the woofer to control its movement. A sealed box requires massive amplifier power to produce deep bass, but it yields a tight, accurate sound. Velodyne already possessed the high-current amplifiers. They already had the servo technology to keep the cone from tearing itself apart during a massive cinematic sound effect. All they had to do was adapt it for the home theater boom. They introduced the F-Series, and later the legendary HGS line, the high-gain servo series. To an American buyer in the 1990s, a Velodyne HGS subwoofer was a physical statement of intent. The HGS 15 featured a high-gloss black piano finish, on a heavy, densely braced wooden cabinet. Inside was an amplifier capable of delivering 1,250 watts of continuous power. The crossover, an electrical network inside a speaker that sends bass, mid-range, and treble to the drivers designed to handle them, was highly sophisticated, allowing a custom installer to seamlessly blend the massive bass output with any brand of main speakers. This level of engineering commanded a severe premium. In 1998, a Velodyne HGS-15 retailed for roughly $2,400. A flagship HGS-18 cost nearly $3,000, equivalent to more than $5,000 today. At that time, a standard American consumer could walk into a Best Buy or Circuit City and purchase an entire home theater in a box system for $400. A Velodyne subwoofer often cost more than the massive rear projection television it sat beneath. But for the premium American audio market, the price was a guarantee of physical performance. Velodyne moved beyond small audiophile boutiques and captured the defining retail channels of the era. The brand became a cornerstone of Magnolia Hi-Fi in the Pacific Northwest, Tweeter in New England, Harvey Electronics in New York, and Overture in Delaware. These were the cathedrals of American audio retail. If a buyer walked into a Magnolia Hi-Fi showroom, they were not just shown a specification sheet, they were given a physical demonstration. The salesman would lead the customer into a dedicated, acoustically treated home theater room. He would close the heavy door, dim the lights, and cue up the T-Rex sequence from Jurassic Park or the lobby shootout in The Matrix. When the dinosaur stepped on screen, a cheap subwoofer would simply rattle the drywall. A Velodyne HGS-15 would pressurize the room. The listener felt the impact in their chest cavity before their brain consciously processed the sound. The high-excursion woofer moved incredible amounts of air, but the servo mechanism stopped the cone the millisecond the footfall ended. There was no muddy aftershock. The bass started and stopped with terrifying precision. Audio magazines like Home Theater, Stereophile, and Sound and Vision consistently use Velodyne subwoofers as their reference standard for product reviews. High-end custom installers, the professionals hired to turn American basements in suburban Chicago, Dallas, and Atlanta into dedicated private cinemas, insisted on the brand. If an installer was building a $50,000 theater, they could not risk a subwoofer that might distort, rattle, or blow a voice coil during a client's movie premiere. They specified Velodyne, knowing the servo circuit would protect the driver no matter how hard the system was pushed. The company's moat was not merely a patent on an accelerometer, it was the physical reality of their manufacturing. Competitors could not easily copy a system that required a custom-matched amplifier, a proprietary motion sensor, a massive magnet structure, and a heavily braced wooden cabinet designed to withstand immense internal pressure. Velodyne had successfully transitioned from an obscure Silicon Valley audiophile solution to the undisputed heavyweight champion of the American home theater. They owned the 0.1 channel, they dominated the custom installation market. The badge on the front was no longer just about stereo accuracy. It was a promise that the room itself would shake. In suburban basements from Seattle to Atlanta, a structural transformation was underway. The traditional living room, once dominated by a pair of floor-standing stereo speakers and a wooden cabinet housing a television and a turntable, was turning its face toward the screen. The rise of DVD followed swiftly by Dolby Digital 5.1 and DTS surround sound meant that American households were demanding a cinematic experience that rivaled the local multiplex. Velodyne owned the room. The company's rise to dominance was anchored by a vast, intricate network of American audio institutions. If a consumer wanted serious sound, they did not buy from a mass-market department store. They went to a specialized dealer network where audio was treated with professional reverence. Names like Magnolia Hi-Fi in the Pacific Northwest, Tweeter in New England, Harvey Electronics in New York, Overture in Delaware, and Sound Advice in Florida formed the retail bedrock of the brand. These were showrooms where carpeted listening rooms, specialized acoustic treatments, and walls of high-end electronics created an environment of uncompromised performance. At the center of these showrooms stood Velodyne. In a typical demonstration at a Magnolia Hi-Fi store in 1999, a customer would be led into a darkened, sound-isolated room. The salesman would power up a massive rack of amplifiers, set the processor, and drop a calibration disc into a DVD player. When the opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan or The Matrix played through the system, the demonstration did not rely on hyperbole. The physical presence of a Velodyne HGS-18 did the talking. When the helicopter rotors began to chop through the air, the low-frequency rumble did not merely fill the room, it pressurized it. The high-excursion woofer moved incredible amounts of air against the sealed wooden cabinet, while the accelerometer inside the voice coil checked every movement 3,500 times a second. The bass was clean, terrifyingly fast, and utterly devoid of the muddy overhang that plagued cheaper subwoofers. The customer walked out with a heavy wooden box that often cost more than $2,500, equivalent to nearly $5,000 today. Velodyne's presence extended far beyond retail showrooms. The brand became the trusted reference standard for high-end custom installers. The elite technicians hired to build $50,000 dedicated private cinemas in the sprawling estates of Dallas, Los Angeles, and Chicago. These installers could not afford component failure. If a subwoofer blew a voice coil or distorted during a high-decibel movie screening for a client, the installer's reputation was ruined. They specified Velodyne because the servo circuit acted as an unbreakable shield, protecting the driver from thermal and mechanical overload. Recording studios in Nashville and Los Angeles adopted Velodyne subwoofers for mixing and mastering, trusting the zero-distortion servo mechanism to reveal the true bottom octave of a multi-track recording without coloring the mix. By the early 2000s, Velodyne's manufacturing output reached its historical peak. The factory in California was humming with activity, assembling massive magnet structures, hand-wiring accelerometer feedback circuits, and finishing heavy cabinets in high-gloss piano, black and rich walnut veneers. Dealer orders stretched out for weeks. The brand name had become a generic descriptor among enthusiasts for the absolute ceiling of low-frequency reproduction. In an American home theater, having a Velodyne subwoofer in the front corner of the room was a declaration of serious intent. It meant the owner understood the physics of sound. It meant they valued uncompressed impact over compact convenience. Yet as the company celebrated its peak years of sales and critical acclaim, the physical reality of the product was hitting a wall. The cabinets were getting larger. The weights were pushing past 100 pounds. The price tags were climbing into territory that only affluent home theater owners could afford. Velodyne had solved the physics of the American basement, but the market above ground was about to shift. Every Velodyne subwoofer shipped from the California factory represented a massive expenditure of American resources. The cabinets were constructed from thick, high-density fiberboard, hand-veneered in real wood, or finished in high-gloss automotive piano black. The drivers utilized heavy cast aluminum frames, enormous ceramic magnet structures, and thick copper voice coils wound by hand. The internal servo boards required precise calibration by technicians who understood accelerometer physics. When a consumer paid $2,500 for an HGS-18, they were paying for American manufacturing, domestic skilled labor, specialized retail distribution, and rigorous quality control. This was the height of the component hi-fi era. It was a time when home entertainment was modular. A living room or basement required a separate display, a separate receiver, a separate multi-channel processor, a dedicated stack of source components, and massive, floor-standing speakers flanked by a 100-pound subwoofer in the corner. For millions of American households, this was the ultimate expression of domestic luxury. The Stereo Store showroom was a weekend destination where fathers and sons, enthusiasts and casual listeners gathered to listen to music and movie soundtracks reproduced at a scale that felt indistinguishable from reality. In suburban homes from California to New York, the Velodyne badge on the front grille signified that the owner had arrived. It was not merely an appliance, it was an acoustic anchor. When the system powered up, the entire room participated in the performance. By the mid-2000s, Velodyne had expanded its lineup to cover multiple price points, introducing the Digital Drive DD series. These models incorporated advanced digital room correction software, allowing a technician or an advanced user to plug a calibration microphone into the front panel, run a series of test tones, and view the room's low-frequency response on an external television screen. The subwoofer could automatically adjust its performance to neutralize the destructive acoustic nodes and standing waves inherent in typical rectangular American basements. It was the absolute zenith of precision engineering applied to domestic low-frequency sound. The company's catalog was thick, its dealer network was fiercely loyal, and its reputation in custom installation was untouchable. In the pages of Stereophile, The Absolute Sound, and Home Theater, Velodyne was treated not just as a manufacturer, but as an institution. The physical empire was at its maximum physical extension. The California factory was turning out heavy boxes by the thousands. The dealer showrooms were shaking daily. The brand name was synonymous with uncompromised power and surgical accuracy. The system felt permanent, but the architecture of American consumer electronics was quietly shifting beneath the heavy wooden cabinets. The specialized hi-fi dealerships that had built Velodyne's reputation were beginning to feel the first cold winds of retail consolidation and online price pressure. The living room was about to change its mind about what kind of sound it wanted. Velodyne had conquered the physics of the American basement, but the market above ground was about to shrink. For 2 decades, Velodyne acoustics had reigned supreme over the dedicated American basement and the high-end stereo showroom. The heavy wooden cabinets, the hand-calibrated servo boards, and the massive ceramic magnet structures were symbols of an uncompromising manufacturing philosophy. But the economic and technological landscape supporting that philosophy was beginning to erode from multiple directions. The decline of an audio empire rarely arrives as a single, catastrophic failure. It begins with a small crack. For Velodyne, the first crack did not appear in an audio laboratory or a corporate boardroom. It appeared in the Mojave Desert in 2004. That year, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, hosted its legendary Grand Challenge, a competition designed to spur the development of autonomous vehicles capable of navigating rough terrain without human drivers. Among the competitors was David Hall, the founder and chief engineer of Velodyne. For years, Hall had experimented with mechanical engineering and sensor technology. To give his autonomous vehicle a reliable way to map its surroundings in real time, he engineered a rotating array of multiple laser beams mounted on the roof of the vehicle. It was an ingenious technological breakthrough. It was also a massive, continent-shifting distraction. While David Hall became consumed by the mathematical precision of laser navigation and the staggering commercial potential of what would become Velodyne LiDAR, the audio division back in Silicon Valley was left to run on its own momentum. The man who had obsessed over every servo circuit, every accelerometer, and every cabinet brace turned his visionary eye toward the highway. The audio engineering team was brilliant, but without the founder's singular obsession driving future acoustic innovation, the R&D pipeline slowed to a crawl. While the audio company's attention drifted, the market around it was being rewritten by Force 2 and Force 5, the collapse of traditional hi-fi retail, and a profound technological shift in how Americans consume sound. For years, Velodyne had relied on a trusted dealer network, specialized American stereo stores, and custom installation firms where sales staff could spend an hour demonstrating the physical difference between a muddy-ported box and a servo-controlled sealed sub. But those local hi-fi shops were vanishing. They were being systematically displaced by big-box electronics retailers like Best Buy and Circuit City, and eventually by online direct-to-consumer marketplaces. Big-box stores did not have acoustically isolated demo rooms. They did not employ salesmen who understood accelerometer physics or room correction nodes. They operated on floor space, inventory turnover, and price points. A $2,500 Velodyne HGS subwoofer could not sell itself sitting next to a stack of discounted, all-in-one home theater in a box packages. Worse still, the American living room itself was rejecting the physical footprint of component audio. The massive CRT televisions were disappearing, replaced by sleek flat-panel plasma and LCD screens that could be mounted directly on the drywall. Homeowners looked at their living rooms and made a simple aesthetic calculation. A 50-inch flat screen looked modern and clean. A pair of towering floor-standing speakers, flanked by a 100-pound wooden subwoofer, looked like an industrial obstacle course. The multi-channel surround sound system, the very ecosystem that had made Velodyne rich in the 1990s, began to contract. Consumers wanted home theater without the wires, the complexity, and the floor space. They wanted simplicity. The home theater in a box packages introduced by mass-market Japanese and Korean consumer electronics brands bundled 4 tiny plastic satellite speakers and a lightweight passive subwoofer for a fraction of the cost of a single Velodyne amplifier. The sound quality was compromised, but to the average American consumer walking down a retail aisle, it was good enough. Velodyne attempted to adapt by introducing smaller, more affordable subwoofers like the Impact series and the Micro V, a remarkably compact aluminum cube that attempted to pack servo-like performance into a tiny footprint using dual passive radiators. The Micro V was an engineering marvel, but it arrived into a retail environment that was already pivoting past traditional speakers entirely. The final decisive blow to the traditional American home theater market came not from another audio brand, but from the invention of the soundbar, a long, narrow speaker system designed to sit beneath a television and replace multiple home theater speakers. The soundbar promised surround sound from a single slender plastic bar hanging under the TV, paired with a small wireless subwoofer that could slide invisibly behind a sofa. It required no custom installation, no complex wiring, no specialized dealer network, and no heavy wooden cabinet taking up floor space. By the late 2000s, soundbars and streaming speaker systems were outselling traditional component home audio systems by orders of magnitude. The American living room had decided that convenience mattered more than uncompressed low-frequency impact. Velodyne Acoustics, a company built entirely around the physical reality of heavy wooden cabinets, massive power amplifiers, and uncompromised servo-controlled bass, found itself stranded in a market that no longer had room for its heavy machinery. For years, the California assembly lines had turned out heavy, unyielding boxes designed to pressurize concrete and drywall basements. Each enclosure represented a massive investment in domestic materials, hand-wound voice coils, precision accelerometers, and dedicated multi-thousand-watt amplifiers. But the retail floors that had once showcased those heavy machines were disappearing into the digital ether. The specialized hi-fi showrooms, the listening rooms in Boston, Chicago, and Seattle, where customers spent hours comparing crossover slopes and low-frequency distortion figures, had been replaced by big-box retail aisles and online shopping carts. A consumer browsing a digital storefront could not feel the physical impact of a servo-controlled 18-inch driver. They could only compare prices, dimensions, and star ratings. And against a lightweight plastic soundbar or a compact wireless subwoofer that could slide invisibly beneath a sofa, a 100-pound walnut cabinet looked less like an acoustic instrument and more like an architectural obstacle. Inside the company, the structural shift had already altered executive priorities. David Hall, the engineering mind who had spent the 1980s perfecting accelerometer feedback loops and low-frequency acceleration, found a vastly more lucrative obsession out on the highway. The success of Velodyne LiDAR in autonomous vehicle navigation had transformed a niche speaker laboratory into a high-stakes technology corporation. The massive capital, engineering talent, and corporate attention required to scale laser sensors for self-driving cars naturally gravitated away from the audio division. The audio engineers remaining in California continued to build exceptional subwoofers, but the pipeline of groundbreaking acoustic innovation slowed. The brand name still commanded absolute reverence among custom installers and vintage audio puriteurs, but the volume of sales was shrinking year by year. The dealers who had built the brand's reputation either closed their doors or shifted their inventory toward mass-market home theater bundles and lifestyle streaming equipment. The economic realities of domestic manufacturing made it increasingly difficult to compete against mass-produced imports built with cheaper drivers and lighter cabinets. A high-performance American speaker company cannot survive on prestige alone. It requires a continuous influx of buyers, a loyal dealer network, and a cultural environment that values the physical act of sitting in a room and listening. By the late 2010s, that environment had fundamentally transformed. The living room had turned its back on component audio. The dedicated basement home theater was giving way to wireless, multi-room audio and television-attached soundbars. The market that had made Velodyne the undisputed king of low-frequency sound had simply dissolved around it. The showrooms closed. The custom installers moved on. The catalog thinned. The factory slowed. The founder looked toward the highway. And the American bass empire went quiet. When the audio division was acquired by Audio Reference in Germany, the new owners did not attempt to mass-produce cheap plastic speakers or chase the wireless Bluetooth market. They understood what the brand had always been, a high-end engineering instrument built for listeners who demanded absolute low-frequency accuracy. Production of select high-performance subwoofers returned to a boutique scale, utilizing heavy cabinets, premium finishes, and the rigorous discipline of servo control. The German distributed models re-entered European and American specialty audio markets with high price tags and strict adherence to the founder's original design philosophy. Yet for thousands of American audiophiles and home theater owners, the true legacy of the brand lives on in the secondary market. On online audio forums like Audiogone, vintage enthusiast boards, and dedicated Facebook groups, collectors actively hunt for classic Velodyne models, the ULD-18s, the HGS-15s, and the Digital Drive series. When an aging DD-18 appears for sale, it commands attention not as a discarded piece of obsolete electronics, but as a prized artifact of the golden age of American home theater. A thriving preservation community keeps these heavy machines alive. Specialized technicians spend hours on repair benches, carefully recapping complex power amplifier boards, sourcing replacement accelerometers, and rebuilding voice coils that have weathered decades of heavy use. They do this because an old Velodyne subwoofer, restored by careful hands and properly calibrated to a listening room, still performs a function that modern lifestyle audio often cannot match. The original engineering still matters because the physics of sound have not changed. A plastic soundbar or a tiny wireless cylinder can use digital signal processing to trick the ear into believing bass is present, but it cannot displace physical air. It cannot pressurize a room with clean, uncompressed acoustic energy down to 16 hertz. That requires mass, volume, structural rigidity, and brute electrical force guided by surgical control. Today, if you travel to the original industrial corridors of San Jose, California, where David Hall first wired an accelerometer to an 18-inch paper cone, you will find no sign of the audio factory. The buildings have been absorbed by the relentless expansion of Silicon Valley technology campuses, software firms, and corporate office parks. The noisy assembly lines, the stacks of walnut veneer, and the testing benches where technicians measured low-frequency distortion have vanished into the digital economy. Yet an unexpected footnote remains etched in audio history. The accelerometer feedback loop and servo control system developed for those heavy domestic subwoofers laid a foundational bridge of motion-sensing precision that quietly influenced how engineers thought about physical feedback in high-performance mechanical systems long before the founder turned his gaze toward autonomous vehicle lasers. The story of Velodyne reveals a recurring truth about how America builds, sells, and discards sound. The market always praises innovation, but it ultimately rewards convenience. American engineering can solve almost any physical problem. It can measure cone movement 3,500 times a second. It can eliminate distortion. It can make a room shake with cinematic terror. But engineering cannot compel a changing culture to keep a 100-pound wooden box in the living room when a slender plastic bar can sit quietly beneath a flat-screen television. The high-end hi-fi showroom has faded. The dedicated basement home theater has given way to wireless streaming. The heavy machinery of domestic audio has retreated to collector basements in specialist audio dens. Yet somewhere in an American basement, a heavy walnut cabinet still stands quietly in the corner, its massive ceramic magnet cold, its grill cloth untouched, waiting for a receiver to glow, a movie to begin, and one more low-frequency wave to move the room. See you in the next one.